Good afternoon. I'm Heidi Thompson, going live on Facebook with our Monday Noontide. Welcome to the show. As you know, I'm your legacy lifeguard with Lifeguarding Legacies. I'm an estate planning attorney who helps people make sure that what they've worked for goes flawlessly to the people they love and the causes they care about. Today on the show, I am so excited to feature Moshe Klein. He's with Affordable Accounting Solutions, and he's here particularly to help small business owners know how they can get that accounting support they need and what his business can help our community with. So, Moshe, I'm so grateful to have you here on the show today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Heidi. I view it as a tremendous opportunity to share information to all the viewers who might be small business owners or who might have just general questions about their business or their taxes or their accounting.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Moshe. Well, first, before we get into the business side, can you just tell me a little about yourself?
Oh, with pleasure. You know, this is my 39th year in business, something I'm very proud of. And I must tell you very honestly, Heidi, that I'm as excited and as passionate to do what I do today as I was decades ago when I started the business. So I guess I'm called a serial entrepreneur. That's why I love working with small business owners. But I started doing bookkeeping work actually right out of college. I was doing it part-time, and then it sort of just took off and grew into a full-time adventure and opportunity. And the business has morphed and changed, as you would imagine, over the decades. But we are nationwide. We work with small business owners and individuals in all 50 states, and we do so remotely. And it had nothing to do, Heidi, with COVID. We've actually been for about a decade working remotely with businesses to keep our prices low and to make our services available to anybody who might benefit anywhere in the country.
You know, and I think this last year has been so good for people to get used to that model. I bet, it's probably been slow. You've been doing it for a while, but now everyone is comfortable with that, where they might have wanted a storefront before. They don't need it anymore. They recognize this is a great time to introduce you to people. I'm so excited about that. Um, so tell me now about your business. How does it work for people?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, we offer affordable bookkeeping, accounting, tax, and payroll services to small business owners and individuals. It works by us providing information. We welcome and encourage the opportunity to meet with potential clients for free, with no cost or obligation in a confidential environment where we can, first of all, just talk about whatever it is that's on their mind, questions they might have, maybe difficulties they're experiencing, and what resources and solutions we might be able to provide. When it's determined that the client feels we would be a good fit for their business, and we determine that indeed we would be, we have some very simple, user-friendly online forms that the client fills out, again, in a secure environment, and then we welcome them to the firm, and it's just as simple as that. We begin doing that bookkeeping or accounting or tax work. Whenever documents need to be uploaded for our benefit to prepare a tax return, for example, it's uploaded to a secure document sharing file that we set up for the exclusive use of the client. And whenever we have something ready, like monthly financial reports or tax returns ready for the client to view, they're notified, and then we meet as often as necessary, and it's all included in that one low monthly fee. We don't charge by the hour.
That is such a relief for people to know that there's something that really, like you said, the name is affordable. It's right there in the name. I love it. So you have worked for 39 years with small businesses. What are some of the common mistakes that you see small business owners make?
There are several. The first one that comes to mind, Heidi, is a common mistake that startups make. They start a business because in many cases they're talented, they've got a great business idea, but they neglect to set up a separate checking account for their business. In our world, it's called commingling of funds. It isn't always necessary to do that, but almost always it is. So it's wise to speak to a tax professional, and we always encourage our clients to speak to an attorney as well about setting up the business the proper way, because we view it as a valuable asset, and setting up the business checking accounts the right way also. The IRS does not look favorably upon commingling of funds, mixing personal and business monies together in the same account. There is one other common mistake, if you want to call it that, Heidi, that I'm sure you could relate to. And that's when people set up a small business, they often don't realize they're creating an asset. And I do believe that we're trained over decades, Heidi, to think of our homes, real estate, as the most valuable asset that we could possibly own. But after so many decades in business, and I've seen so many small businesses grow to generate multiple 7 figures a year, often that business is their most valuable asset, and they don't even realize it. And consequently, they don't treat it accordingly.
That makes sense. And I can tell you, if you businesses should, like you said, you recommend the lawyer pieces. When a business sets up a business, they should not only register that business, but they should also have an operating agreement that, as well as their articles of incorporation. There's 2 founding documents. Everyone has to do an articles of incorporation. You can do that right on the Arizona site when you set up an LLC. But not everyone does an operating agreement. And that operating agreement is kind of a prenup for your business. So it's that, what happens on divorce, what happens when you die, and it goes through all of how the business is going to be operated. It makes sense, operating agreement. And people forget to do this document. And so it's not clear then what happens from the business when the business is dissolved, when you die, when you go through a divorce. That's how Bezos and others get in trouble. They don't have clear documents saying how that works. So I'm sure I appreciate that you share that with your clients. It's an important piece. So
I do, Heidi, and I encourage them to speak to attorneys just like you. There is an accounting and a tax perspective, and there's a legal perspective as well. As you briefly touched on, Heidi, I regret, but I recall so many, more than I care to remember, situations where a husband, a wife set up a business, put their blood, sweat, and tears into it for many years, and then one of the spouses dies suddenly or becomes incapacitated. And all of a sudden, something happens in that business that they didn't plan for or want to have happen. And that's why it's important to set up the business correctly and to make sure that there is an estate plan or even a trust in place to make sure that those assets go and are managed the way that the owners want them to be managed.
absolutely. That's another great point. And I work with small business owners on that quite often, making sure that they have what happens when for the incapacity and death in their estate planning. And we can do that. Their business proceeds would be designated by the operating agreement and then held into the trust, or it specifies what account that should go to. And there's lots of ways to set that up with clients, but it's important that they have that plan and not just leave it to chance. I know we all think we're immortal, but we're not. So
We always believe in the saying in business that whatever can go wrong usually does. It's just a matter of when. So you have to really prepare for the worst, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst and know that you've done all that you can do to protect what often is truly the most valuable asset that any family can own, and that's their small business.
great. So earlier before we got on the show, you were telling me about a success story you had for a business owner. And this was a business owner who hadn't done it right. And so they had made some of the small mistakes and you were able to swoop in and make it not as bad. So can you tell us about that?
Oh, with pleasure. It's one of so many success stories that I could share. One day, perhaps I'll even write a book like you to tell my stories. But yeah, so in brief, there was a wonderful client that came to us a little over a year or so ago, and they were actually being audited by the IRS going back several years, obviously before we met them. They had indeed commingled their business and personal funds, and it was the IRS believed that they owed hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes, plus interest and penalties. After speaking with the clients, we knew that they owed money, but we believed, and it turned out to be correctly so, that it was far less than what the IRS was pursuing. And they were actually at the point of going after a levy on their accounts. So what we did in brief, Heidi, I know it's amazing, it's scary. You can't imagine how scary these clients were. But we went ahead, we prepared new financial reports. We did from scratch all of the bookkeeping going back several years. We prepared amended tax returns, and we brought the amount that they owed down to a fraction of what the IRS claimed that they owed. And they're now working on a very affordable and mutually acceptable payment plan with the IRS to pay what they legitimately owed. So that's one of many tax stories, success stories that come to mind. And I think it emphasizes why when people say they can't afford to meet with an attorney or an accountant, I would, I think, correctly argue, and so would you, in many cases, you can't afford not to. The cost of fixing the mistakes later can far outweigh any initial cost for services.
Absolutely, 100%. Okay, so if people wanted to get in touch with you so that they could have that free consultation and sit down and talk about their business and figure out what it would take and how you could help them, how would they reach you?
Thank you for that opportunity. We welcome free and confidential consultations with anybody that just has any questions, even if they're not ready to hire an accounting firm or switch services. We would welcome that contact. They can reach me directly by email at Moshe, M-O-S-H-E, at mkabusiness.com. And I encourage everybody to visit our website, mkabusiness.com. We've got just a whole gaggle of great information about bookkeeping, accounting, tax, and payroll services. Feel free to browse around.
That is perfect. What a great resource for people. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we finish out our show today?
Yes, just one thing, going back to bookkeeping, Heidi, you know, we're mid-year now. We're about to go into July. The first half of the year is behind us. It is not too late to reach out for a free and confidential consultation with an attorney like Heidi or an accountant like myself to go back to January 2021 to set up your books correctly. We have a whole half year more to do the bookkeeping correctly, which should make doing the tax returns for your business or personal so much easier when we quickly approach that time in just a few months at the beginning of 2022. So if you have any questions at all, give us a call at MKNA. We do it all.
I love that. MKNA, they do it all. So this has been the Monday Noontide with Moshe Klein today. I'm Heidi Thompson, your legacy lifeguard with Lifeguarding Legacies, helping you with your estate planning needs. And for business owners, that would mean making sure that you've got a plan to take that business asset and pour it into either some kind of an account directly or into your trust, which usually makes sense for business owners to look at the trust. I'm happy to help you with that. Like Moshe said, I also do free consultations. I do come to you and you do no paperwork when you work with me. I just take the notes and ask the questions to make it super easy for you. I look forward to hearing more from you. And Moshe, thank you so much for the valuable information you're sharing with this audience. I know they appreciate it too. I think there is definitely a perception that accounting is expensive, and I can tell that is not. They need to make that call and realize how affordable it really can be to take that weight off of themselves and their business. So that's been it for today's Monday Noontide. I look forward to seeing you next week, as we will have Sweet Cheryl's talking about how you can get custom cookies for your business for all of your promotional events and thank yous. And Sweet Cheryl is a sweetheart. You'll love her too. I love my audience. I love my business people, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much and have a wonderful week.